You are listening to the Keep the Weight Off podcast with Dr. Angela, episode number 82.
Welcome to the Keep the Weight Off podcast, where we bust all the dieting myths and discover not just how to lose weight, but more importantly, how to keep it off. We go way beyond the food, and we use science and psychology to give you strategies that work. And now your host, Dr. Angela Zechmann.
So welcome, friends. So excited to be with you this week. And welcome back, Marchelle. We haven't seen you for a while. I haven't been talking to you for a while. We had our interview with Cassie that went over the last 3 weeks. It's super good to be back together again in our normal situation. Did you get to see the YouTube videos of my interview with Cassie?
Yes. First of all, hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be back. Missed everybody. Missed doing this. Yes, I did get to watch most of it. It was so touching. Like, I cried with her. I just identified so much with her story because I'm not sure, but I think most of us have those situations in our childhood that shape and form the way that we think about ourselves, and those bad experiences, and they carry over into adulthood. And I just totally understood where she was coming from. I just think she's so wonderful. And I just loved it. I thought it was great.
Well, and what I thought was that she just really let us know just what hard work this really is. Like, losing weight and keeping it off is not for sissies.
No, the keeping it off part is I totally struggle with that right now. And I did not fully understand what that meant, the keep the weight off, until this last year, because I was in the process of getting to a goal and I did really well. And then once I got to that goal weight, that just tripped me up, and I've been struggling ever since then. And so I totally relate to that struggle, but we're here and we're talking about it.
That's why it's called the Keep the Weight Off podcast. So so Cassie really helped all of us. If you guys have not, if anybody who's listening to the podcast today has not watched the interview with Cassie on YouTube, I want you to go to the Dr. Angela Zechmann channel on YouTube and watch that after you're done listening to today's podcast, because Cassie really, she's lost 175 pounds and she's had some ups and downs along the way, but she has kept off, at least 150 of it. And she's on her way getting back down to the 175. So it's just a really, really remarkable journey. And just the way she talks about all of the work that she had to do that really had nothing to do with the food,
Yeah.
So
she's amazing.
Much. She's really
total
amazing.
Inspiration. Yes.
Yeah.
I think everybody should go in and watch that. She's just awesome.
Yeah, she's great. All right. Well, today I wanted to talk about something that's very personal to me. And I think a lot of people might not know, but my mother passed away. And I hope I'm going to get through this okay. She passed away on September 10th, which it's been about a week now since she passed. And she had a stroke the week before. So, my mother was 92. So she lived a good, long life. But at the end, she had Alzheimer's and she was mostly deaf. And so in the last several years of her life, it was really difficult to communicate with her. And much of the time, what she would say, didn't make a lot of sense to any of us. So they call Alzheimer's, or basically any kind of dementia, really, they call it the long goodbye, because you really don't have much of a relationship with someone who isn't present with you in your current reality. And so we were never really sure where she was. It seemed oftentimes like she was back in her childhood. She would bring up things from her childhood. She would say that she wanted to go back to her parents' house, that kind of thing. And so when she had this massive stroke a couple of weeks ago now, I was actually breathing a sigh of relief, because oftentimes people with Alzheimer's, they just very slowly over a long, long period of time just lose more and more and more function. And I was really dreading watching that. And so what happened for my mother is she had this massive stroke, which left her completely paralyzed, unable to communicate at all. She was unable to eat or drink. And we already knew, that she would not have any codes called on her, which means if her heart stops beating, we're not going to resuscitate her. So there weren't going to be any heroic efforts to keep her alive. But I also had to make this really hard decision to turn off IV fluids because she couldn't eat or drink. And so basically it was, we don't give her any feeding tube. We don't give her any IV fluids, and then we wait. So I just want you to imagine having to make those kinds of decisions. It was not easy. The hospice nurses were wonderful, and they explained that sometimes it takes quite a bit of time for someone to pass after the nutrition and the IV fluids have stopped. And so I have 3 siblings, and we were all gathered near my mom, and we were, saying our last goodbyes and all of that. And we waited and we waited and we waited for days, for 6 days. And finally, mercifully, she passed. And I was with her at her bedside almost all of those 6 days. I think I took one night that I stayed at the B&B that we were at and slept in a real bed, but I was there most of it. And I was with her when she took her last breath, and it was all very peaceful and exactly the way you would want to pass if it was you passing. So, I mean, it's what we would all hope for to happen at the end of our lives. And so I've been kind of dealing with all of this, and what I'm left with now is this really strange feeling. I don't know how to describe it. There's grief for sure, but I kind of felt like we had lost Mom years ago when the dementia set in, like we couldn't have a real relationship with her. But yet we didn't really lose her until now. And up until her passing, there was always still this sense that there was a head to our family. My father passed many, many years ago. And so my mother was the head of the family, basically. And so now my siblings and I are left, and they say it kind of feels like being orphaned, but I'm not really sure that that's accurate. The feeling is more like the family doesn't feel as cohesive, perhaps. And so I was really inspired to reflect on this. What is it about mothers? What do mothers do for their families and for their children? More so than fathers, I think, at least in my experience. Mothers are like the glue of the family, if that makes sense. And so now it sort of feels like there's a little bit of an unraveling and an instability. And my siblings and I are all feeling it. We just feel a little bit unsteady. I guess that's the best way to put it. Does that make sense, Marchelle?
Yeah, I'm just over here tearing up because I was fortunate enough to meet your mom one time, and she's just adorable. Yes, when she came to the clinic, and she sat all day. She sat all day with us in the office, and she was just she's just beautiful.
I forgot about that.
She was just so nice, and she just sat there, and she was just a wonderful person.
She came in with me to see
there.
Patients a few times, and she would fall asleep.
She just fall asleep sitting up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then she'd wake up every once. It was like I felt really blessed to have met her, and I just there's never any words that make this easier or better. I mean, there's nothing we can say. I understand Mom's, being the head of the family, and my grandma was sort of in that role where she was like at the head, and she kept everything together. And then when she passed, everybody felt my mom has had to step into that role. And, and this is like my mom sends the birthday cards out to the whole family, and she, arranges reunions and then things like that. And also keeps everybody aware of what everybody else is doing. She keeps in contact with everybody because it's hard for all of us to keep in contact with each other. So I just realize how important of a role that is. And and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, my mother's death also made me think a lot about the influence mothers have on our eating patterns and our exercise patterns and all of that.
Yes.
My mother was, you met her. She was genetically blessed. She could eat anything she wanted and never gain any weight. And she ate a lot of sugar. She was tiny. She ate a lot of sugar, and she fed us kids a lot of sugar too. And, I came of age in the 60s and 70s, and that's just what moms did. They, we all got a lot of sugar. And my mom would go to the Hostess Bakery outlet at least once a week and get stocked up on treats. And she'd always have treats around the house. And the interesting thing was that as I learned more and more about what sugar does to us, and I tried to teach her, She just absolutely couldn't understand. She had no idea why I thought eating so much sugar was bad for you, because it had never caused her any problems, at least never any problems that she recognized, because she had never gained any weight. But what my mother didn't realize is that she had terrible tooth decay. That was because part of it was because of the sugar intake. She had early heart disease. She had high blood pressure, and her eventual Alzheimer's disease were all linked to her high sugar consumption. We know that now, right? Now, of course, I can't fault her because we didn't know then what we know now about what sugar consumption can do. So it's really interesting. One of the things that we're doing in the Empowered Weight Loss community is we're thinking about September is Habit Month, and we're thinking about our childhood eating patterns. And we're thinking about, what did we learn about food when we were growing up? And what kinds of foods were staples for us? And what kinds of foods were used in celebrations? And what if we were having an emotional upset? Many people were taught by their mothers or caregivers to use food as a way of soothing themselves. So, for example, to have some candy if you're sad. And so I would just encourage each of our listeners to think about this. Just very objectively, just ask yourself, what kinds of eating patterns did you have as a child? How did your particular mother approach food? Did she make you clean your plate? Were you a member of the Clean Your Plate Club, Marchelle?
Yes, definitely. And for some reason, I'm sitting here and what's coming to mind is Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. Oh. I remember growing up, I wanted to win that golden ticket so bad when I was a kid. I was obsessed with that movie. And even when they redid it with Johnny Depp, I couldn't watch it fast enough. The thought of going to a candy factory was amazing to me as a kid. And I just realized how bad that really was. What a bad message that's sending to kids, because I think we all wanted to win that golden ticket when we were growing up, people, from my generation, but not good.
That's very interesting. I'd never thought about that. Wow. The Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
Did your mother teach you that lunch or dinner wasn't complete without a sweet treat at the end?
Yeah, we always had dessert.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did too. So these are all really common eating patterns, and so you just kind of want to ask yourself, question everything about what you were taught as you were growing up, and ask yourself if it still serves you, And again, I'm not dissing anybody's mother at all, because our mothers were trained by their mothers and we were all trained by our society. The idea here is not to diss your mother and try to tell her that she's wrong or anything like that. The idea is to just ask yourself, what kinds of patterns did you have? And are they conducive to your health? And if they're not conducive to your health, do you want to continue them, even though they're patterns, they're family traditions and they're patterns that you grew up with? Do you want to continue them? It's a lot to think about. It really is.
It is a lot, because there's some traditions that are deeply rooted in our family, in my family. For one, Christmas cookies. Birthday cakes.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And so not doing that, it leaves a hole in celebrations that we need to fill with something different. And it's hard to do that because you just get so used to doing it, and it's a huge change. So
yeah, it was really interesting because my mother, she always made angel food cakes for us on our birthday, and she always frosted them pink. And so this is just what we did in our family, is everybody gets a pink cake on their birthday. We always called it the Pepto-Bismol pink birthday cake because it was color of pink.
Yeah, so. I can imagine. But it sounds like something that we all do. We've done that.
We've been doing this. Yeah. It started when I turned 1. So it's been almost 60 years now that we've been doing the pink birthday cakes in my family. And so, that's just one of those sort of traditions. Christmas cookies, gingerbread cookies is another one, you just want to ask yourself questions about this. You may decide that you want to continue some of these traditions. And that's fine if you make that decision with knowledge and understanding. That's absolutely fine. But I don't want you, our listeners, to just take everything and not be thinking very specifically and consciously about some of these traditions that you may have grown up with. That's my only point. So just be conscious about it.
Yeah. Another thing that comes to mind. Do you remember the patient that you had that did the fudge during the holidays? And it was like it was like a business, and it was really popular in our area.
Mm.
And don't you remember when she decided not to do it?
Yes.
For the first year, that she was coming to the clinic. And it was such a huge deal because so many people counted on it.
Yes.
And they were angry, like literally mad when she decided not to do it. And so she didn't she do Christmas wreaths instead?
She did. She made Christmas wreaths.
And she was so excited about it. But I remember, just the grief that she had because people were angry. Because they counted on her fudge every year. And so, I mean, like, that was just a really huge deal for her to have to change that. So I know that, like, some of us have cake decorators in our families. I mean, just that's made a living of this, bakers. Yeah. And so it's a hard tradition, or many traditions to break.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But it's necessary.
Just be aware. That's my only point is like, just be aware and make conscious decisions about what you want to continue to do and what you don't want to continue to do. And don't do it just because it's always been done that way. You can change from fudge at Christmas to wreaths at Christmas.
Definitely. Candle making.
Yeah. Well, having lost my mother now, I just think that, mothers really and truly are one of our earliest influences. And I don't think they always want the best for us. And, they're an early influence for us, but they really continue to influence us throughout our entire lives. Whether they're still among the living or whether they're not among the livings, the things that our mothers teach us are super, super important. So for those of you whose mothers are still among the living, I would just ask you to give them an extra hug the next time you see them and recognize that what they're doing just by their very presence in your life, they are providing that sense of stability. If nothing else, I'm sure they're probably doing a lot more as well, but as long as they're alive, there is that sense of stability. And for those of you whose mothers have passed on, I would encourage you to really reflect on their influence in your life and reflect on what is it that they taught you. That was one of the things, my mom had a Catholic funeral, and the priest asked us, what is the most important thing that your mother taught you? And so that was really an interesting question because I have three siblings, but only one of them was there with me talking to the priest. And I said, well, she was always really good at entertaining. And I picked that up from her. And my brother said she could stretch $1 as far as anybody could stretch $1. He's now an accountant.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they really do have a profound influence on your lives. So, and for those of you who are mothers, I'd encourage you to reflect a little bit on how it is that you influence your own children's lives. And don't ever take for granted just how important you are to your children and what a sense of stability and security that you bring to your children. And ask yourself, what is it that you want your children to understand about their health? Take an honest look at what you're modeling for them. Are you showing them how to take good care of their bodies with your example? Are you teaching them how to love themselves enough to make the choices that will bring them long-term health, even though it may be difficult in the moment? Are you teaching them how to cook real food and then sit down to enjoy it? So those are some of the questions that we can be asking ourselves as we reflect on the influence of our mothers. Does that make sense?
Yes, I would just like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to my mother. My mother would move mountains for me. She is amazing. And I love you, Mom, if you're listening to this.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love it. Okay. Thank you all for listening this week. It's been wonderful to be here with you. And it's wonderful to be back with you too, Marchelle. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see all of you next week. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, if you really want to lose weight and keep it off for good, your next step is to sign up for Dr. Angela's free weight loss course, where you're going to learn everything you need to get started on your weight loss journey the right way. Just head over to journeybeyondweightloss.com/free course to sign up. Also, it would be awesome if you could take a few moments and write a review on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you in Journey Beyond Weight Loss.